Hello, everybody, and we're back with another episode of the Mindful Constitution podcast. I'm here with Christine, who is amazing. We are actually just kind of like shooting the shit before we got on here, and we were touching on some really interesting topics. We're like, what the hey? Let's just skip this and just dive right into the podcast. So, that's what we're doing right now. So, hello, Christine. How are you?
Hi, Katie. Good. How are you?
So good. I know I guess before we dive in, I'll just preface by a brief introduction before I go into the conversation we were just having off the record. But this is Christine McKenney, right? That's how I say McKenney?
You got it.
Good. And you're an RN, you're a lactation consultant, but you also own your own business, WOOM Wellness, which is really this community for kind of prenatal, postpartum, pregnancy, education, and really like resources, I would say, for families to get holistic care throughout their creation of families at any part in the way, whether is it getting pregnant too? Like, do you do anything around fertility, or is it more just like once you're pregnant, going through the process there?
Yeah. So, for me personally, in the work that I do, don't specifically work with couples who are looking to conceive or individuals who are looking to conceive. However, that is a piece of what I hope to build and create. Hopefully in a physical space in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, in the next 6 months to a year. So I envision having really holistic practitioners who work with families all the way from like conception or like thinking about conception and helping them, get as healthy as possible and learn about their bodies, their partner's bodies, and optimizing their health before they even conceive, or if they need help conceiving, like how can we support this in a really holistic, natural way? Excuse me. And then all the way through pregnancy, I teach prenatal education classes. I'm prenatal yoga certified. And then obviously the lactation piece. I work with families postpartum and offer classes and all kinds of stuff. Just trying to build community and a really nice place for people to get what they need. And I know we're going to dive deeper into this, so I'll try not to say too much to give it all
Yeah,
away
no,
right now. But
crushing it.
yeah, all preconception all the way through parenting is really my vision. I worked at a hospital in a healthcare setting for 12 years, and I had all different kinds of experiences, from working in the NICU setting, the neonatal intensive care unit, working with like the teeny tiniest little babies and families in that realm of life. I did postpartum care on a labor and delivery unit and taught all kinds of classes, ran the perinatal education department for a few years at that hospital. And I also had the opportunity to work in an OBGYN office that specialized in really like natural restorative fertility medicine. So that was really interesting to learn. It was still medical. It wasn't like herbs and things like that, but it was really interesting to see that in a healthcare setting and how that works. So through my experience in all of those things, I have just felt like there needs to be more, and there's a lot that's missing. And my own journey through having 3 children and working with all these families over the last 12 years, I knew I wanted to do something like this, and I finally listened to the call.
Yeah. I know you have such an extensive background. And I was going to say as well, like, can't forget that you actually are a mother of three yourself. And so, before diving in, I just wanted to give listeners like a forecast too of this episode because not only does Christine have like this extensive medical background, and we're really going to be diving into what is missing in the current healthcare model from her own perspective working in it, but also from her perspective as a mom of three that's gone through this on a personal level. We're also going to be touching upon just her experience in motherhood and some of the wisdom she can pass along there, and even just her decision to stop drinking about a year ago for more so like health related reasons, but also what we were just chatting about with things that we see around drinking and motherhood, or mommy and wine culture as it's commonly referred to. So lots of fun topics to dive into today with all different um, wisdom that we can glean from you. Yes. But first, I know before we got on, we were talking about just this like weird phase when you're in your birthing month. And you were asking, because I'm doing 2 days, and you were saying that you reflected on that time in your life when you with each of your kids, feeling like it was like a weird um, holding zone, kind of. Where it's like it could be today or it could be in 3 weeks. And I wanted to hear more too about your experience, if you elaborate on that, and also like your own birthing experiences.
Sure. Yeah, I always think it's so crazy, right? Knowing and thinking that as you're approaching your due month, because it's not a due date, that's like
Yeah.
kind of silly that we get so attached to this date.
Yeah.
But it's a due month, so roughly 38 to 42 weeks gestation is when you should like color in your calendar of like,
Yeah.
a baby might come during this month, this time
Right.
period, right? And
It's
go, okay.
definitely this like weird mental headspace you're in where you kind of feel like you have to be in this like good mind frame of mind, like for just like I really don't want to go into labor like on a bad day or an off day. So I'm just trying to just be in a happy space all the time, or kind of just a resilient, peaceful space, I guess. And it's kind of really mentally preparing for that is a weird feeling.
Can I just say, like, you're amazing because that just that one sentence that you said, if more people could like get there and understand that, I think it would serve them so much to not get so attached to like the plan and the timing and like this has to happen like now. And we didn't actually talk about this before we hit the record button.
That's okay.
And it wasn't in the questions, but it's just like organically coming up. So I just
Yeah.
would love to kind of touch upon it. Um, but it has to do with everything we're talking about and this sort of obsession with control.
Mhm.
And that is something that I really try and teach families a little bit more about, and not even teach them, but sort of plant seeds for them to dig deeper in our birth preparation classes
Right.
about like desiring control. And pregnancy, birth, and parenting is the exact opposite of control. We control nothing. Like,
Yeah.
we need to just learn how to control our mindset. And you being there already is going to serve you immensely in this
Mhm.
journey that you're about to embark on and your parenting journey as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I think I always try to just think of the word surrender to the process a little bit. And I balance that a lot. I am a Virgo, so I do have a birth plan and all of those things, but I obviously recognize that there's plenty of circumstances that are outside my control, but what I can control is like my mental preparation educating myself as much as I possibly can on the different options, and feeling in a good place about my decision with everything. But also, I've done a lot of like visualizing of all outcomes and just being at peace with whatever happens, knowing that I've done everything I can within my power to have a healthy pregnancy, advocate for myself and the choices I want in the healthcare setting. Research options. It's like there's so many things you can do to prepare, but at a certain point too, you just have to be like, okay, like I did it all. I'm prepared as much as I will ever be, and now I just have to like do what my body is made to do.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Yes. That is everything. And I 100% agree and like teach everything you just shared.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it really is all about the preparation of all those components and then the surrender. And I
Yeah.
think that piece is so, so vital. And it's hard to practice, especially I talk about like our modern day way of living quite a bit in our classes.
Yeah.
But our modern day way of living is conditioning us to be a certain way and want a certain element of control. And this whole experience is not that. And it's very hard to sort of
Yeah.
yourself how to balance all of that
Right.
and how to
And
practice surrender.
totally to kind of enjoy the uncertainty, ambiguity in the process, and knowing that, you can prepare as much as you want for everything. But ultimately, sometimes like things go better when you have some element of flexibility, regardless of what type of birth plan you have. If you're like the most natural person ever, you're like, give me a scheduled C-section right now, or I want this intervention, that intervention. Doesn't matter where you fall on the spectrum. I think if you like rigidly hold on to that version of what you think you want, it can set you up to just have a horrible experience, because if it doesn't go that way, it can feel like an already intimidating situation can go left quickly, I would imagine. But yeah, just kind of doing my best to um go with the flow. But it's funny, John and I were just talking about it like the other day, and he's like, I do feel like I'm just kind of ready for the baby to come now, because, I feel like we're kind of in this limbo at this point. I'm like, yeah, well, like nothing we can do, honey. So tell me about how you dealt with some of these. I always love to hear, especially with someone with so much experience in birthing, not only just knowledge wise and education wise, but also personally. And, how did you apply some of these to your own experiences, especially with 3 kids? Was there any things you're like, okay, never doing that again, or I'm going to do that differently next time, or that went well, or I'm learning as I go? Like, what were your biggest takeaways from the different experiences you had?
Yeah. Hmm. It's funny. I actually don't often talk about my birth experiences, so it's funny to like now have to talk about them. And the reason why I don't in my classes is because it doesn't matter what I did. When
Yeah.
I'm teaching, I want them to think about their own experience,
Mhm.
and not compare my experiences in any way
It,
or have that influence them in any
yeah.
way. So now being on the other side of it, I'm like, oh, what do I want to actually say about
Because everyone does that the minute you're pregnant. They're like, oh God, like mine, I've had the worst time ever. You're like,
this?
okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
and that's why like I always tell them to just like block everybody's story out because that's not your story. You have
Yeah.
no idea what's going to happen. And most of those stories that are shared in the grocery store with you or like wherever in the waiting room,
Mhm.
most of those stories aren't actually great to hear. They're not
Right.
empowering.
Yeah.
And so I guess that is what I do want to share about my own stories. So thank you for
Yeah.
just like actually mentioning that. Um, I think there's so much fear around birth. And I think it's just because we're so far removed from it nowadays. Like I always talk about how birth just in the last like less than 100 years truly has changed so much because it moved into the hospital setting. And so now, as expecting parents and new parents, we don't see people in labor. Like, we don't see what does it really look like when someone gives birth, or in those early postpartum times, or breastfeeding a baby. And so in the last 100 years, we've lost so much wisdom as a society, and those things aren't really passed down anymore. And so part of WOOM, part of what I'm trying to do is to help bring all of that wisdom back. And how can we share that and have it be like an empowering experience for people, in such like a supportive and loving way. So sharing those birth stories, like, to anyone listening, if you ever feel like you want to share your birth story with someone, don't try and scare like the daylights out of them by what you're about to share. Instead, think to yourself, like, what part of my story can I share that will empower this person on their own journey, right? So what is one like piece of wisdom or something that you're so proud of from your own birth experience that you can actually share as a gift, instead of saying like, oh, you are not ready for this, like, you'll never believe how terrible this was or that was. And that's what birth story sharing has really turned into for a lot of circles. So
Yeah. No, totally. I was just gonna completely agree that it's often the horror stories that are recounted, and even just in the reading I've done, and I'm clearly not an expert. Okay, I'm just going through this for the first time. Okay, I am not claiming to be experienced in birthing. That said, I've done a lot of reading just about in preparation about around hypnobirthing and just how important our mindset is going into it, and the element of trust and belief we have in our body's capabilities to do what it needs to do, and the our it is literally like a sphincter that this baby is coming out of. And if you think about sphincters, they need to be relaxed. You don't want to be puckered up when you're taking a poop now, do you? So it's like when we're all tense and stressed out because we're just saturating ourselves with horror stories or negative experiences, I think it really does impact our ability to birth successfully and have a good experience. And just like anything else, the mind body connection is so powerful, and the outcome of what happens. And yeah, our society really has a lot of kind of fear mongering around child birthing, which of course, like, it's a big a big transformation you're going through. It's not easy, but a lot of the best things aren't. And so I think that as someone who has absolutely no experience birthing a child yet, that fear is probably not helpful. So I totally think it makes sense what you're saying about our conditioning around sharing the worst experiences we've had and just offering that to a pregnant woman. How we've accepted that as normal seems really weird to me.
yes, it is.
Are you trying to scare someone who hasn't given birth before? What's your motive in sharing like the goriest details of your birthing story to somebody who's just about to go through it?
And it's funny because truthfully, I actually think it comes from a place of like love and wanting to warn someone to
Mhm.
protect them. I don't think it comes from a place of like they're trying to like
Yeah.
freak anyone out. But I think when we can like hit pause and reflect on like, is what I'm saying actually helpful or is it harmful?
Yeah.
Um, and how can we share our birth story in a way that is giving that gift and helping this mama feel empowered, or dad too, right? Like, dads have their own birth stories, or partners have their own birth experience,
Right.
support people. So what can they share with another support person or dad or whoever to empower them? So to go back to what you asked about my own birth experiences, I don't know how much detail you want to go into, but I would say the like overarching thing that I want to share from all three of my birth experiences is that you never know, and I never knew like how powerful I was until I actually gave birth. And I think I feel like I'm gonna like start crying, but
Cry away.
I think it's so, so important to help women and birthing people remember their power and know that this is probably going to be the most powerful you've ever felt in your entire life. Like, it has the potential for that, while also being like the most vulnerable you've ever felt and the most proud you've ever felt, like coming through this experience. And it's definitely hard, but just like you said, like anything great is hard, I think. And that's the whole point. It's really like showing you how capable you are. And it doesn't matter what your birth looks like. It doesn't matter if you have a vaginal birth or a cesarean birth. Knowing that you grew this little human and like brought them through the portal of your body into existence one way or another, it's truly a miracle. No matter how many times I see birth, I'm still like, how does this actually happen?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just want expecting families to know, like, and understand how powerful they are and amazing. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah. Yes, I think that drawing together of the most vulnerable you ever feel and the most powerful is so cool to see both of those kind of emotions in one experience. And I know we talked a little bit starting out about things you saw missing in the healthcare system and what you felt like we needed more, more in terms of just more in general, all of it. Pregnancy, postpartum, actual birthing and education around that and empowerment. And you said, things have really shifted since we've moved into the hospital. And so, like, what things do you feel like are mostly missing around care for birth? And what do you feel like, has been taken away through having birth fully in a hospital setting?
Yeah. I could talk about this for like days on end, so I'm gonna try and like do the bullet point spark notes version of this.
Yeah, I know. It's a good topic, this one here.
Yeah. I
The
feel
medicalization of it all.
Say that again.
The medicalization of it all, And
Yeah.
my kind of take on it, when I can't wait to hear yours, is just that it is a natural process that we intervene a lot in, but there's lots of interventions that I think, are needed and necessary at some point. I think we just use them a lot. And so what do you think?
I totally agree. I think it's really tricky. There's so many layers to it. Sorry, the sun is like blasting in my eyes, so I'm just gonna adjust a little bit here. I'm melting. I think there's a lot of power lost for a lot of people. And I'm coming from working in the hospital setting for, over a decade, and not hating on the hospital or the system completely, but when you are entering into that system, there's a lot of it's a lot of newness all at once. And so, you walk in, and most likely in most hospitals, you don't know the people that are greeting you. You don't know the people that are taking care of you. There's a really good chance you don't even know the nurse, doctor, midwife who is going to be attending your birth. So that really like personal trust foundation that we had for all of human existence before birth moved to the hospital, right? There were aunties and sisters and like the wise women of the village and then midwives, right? Yeah. Like we trusted them and we had relationships with them. And now, even like when our grandparents were giving birth, like they often knew the midwife or doctor and worked with them throughout their pregnancy, which like birth in like the 50s is 60s is like a whole nother topic to dive into another time.
Yeah, when they did sedated births, people were knocked out, like losing their shit.
Like they had like this continuum of like consistent practitioner, but then they were doing all these horrible.
You're like, okay, we're gonna black you out now for your birth. Talk about disempowering.
Crazy. So I think that's really hard, and I think that it's tricky because there's a lot of things that are missing in the way that doctors are trained. And no shade to doctors, right? Like I've worked with incredible doctors over the years who I absolutely adore, and they're wonderful with their patients and they're incredible clinicians, but they're not trained in the same way a midwife is trained necessarily. So I think that's adding another layer that can be really tricky. This is a natural process in a lot of cases that we're now bringing into the hospital, which is a place for like often interventions and assessments and like analyzing things. And like it's hard for people not to intervene, right? So I think that complicates things. And then the postpartum care, I mean, prenatal care as well. One thing I wanted to mention that I was so incredibly fortunate to be a part of during my first pregnancy that I wish there was, I wish there was much more access to this model of care. But where I used to work, one of the prenatal care offices that attended births at the hospital I worked for, they were a mission-based clinic, but anyone could go there. So they served uninsured and underinsured women and anyone else who wanted to go there and have care through there could. And I loved the midwife and the staff there so much. So I just wanted to go there because I knew the midwife and she's amazing. But their model of care that they had as an option was something called centering. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that before. It's not super common around here. But centering is like group prenatal care, which I think is incredible. But again, in our modern way of living, we don't have time for centering, most people. Centering is you're with this like cohort of other pregnant people. So you're 39 plus weeks right now. So for your whole pregnancy, you would have been in this group of people who were around the same like month due date as you. And you have these group visits. So it's like education, then one-on-one time with the midwife, where you do all the normal like prenatal visit stuff, but it had so much education and built-in community with those people. So every month, or as you get further in pregnancy, a couple times a month, you would be seeing them, you know, talking about your experience at the stage of pregnancy you're in. The midwife and nurse would be giving you tips on how to, you know, be comfortable in the first trimester and what to do about nausea and all this stuff. And then you have your little group that you move through the whole time. And it was so incredible to have that experience. And I wish prenatal care was more like that.
Hearing about something like that makes you realize just how many different ways there are that things could be done outside of conventional medical system, and how we can utilize our shared wisdom as women together, because otherwise you're just getting shuttled in and out of the hospital. They pretty much tell you, you know, what everything procedurally is done. For the 1% this happens, 1% that happens. And before you know it, you're doing like 10 different things for a 1% chance on every single case and stuff. And so I feel like that would be such a wonderful resource to have, you know, a community, and not to mention the healing power of community and going through that together, shared wisdom. It actually seems like it would be providing more, you know, a lot more support that's needed to the mothers, and kind of streamlining things too for the practice if you're meeting with people in group settings and stuff. And I just think there is, and I am going to have my baby in the hospital, and I feel like the Beverly Hospital, they have a team of midwives. And so I feel like and I've been able to have really honest conversations with them about preferences and what type of experience I want, and been very straightforward and advocating for myself and doing a lot of research on the back end. But I just wonder, you know, how many people just get shuttled through without really questioning anything that they're being told to do. That's a lot of which are, yeah, to me just seem like overkill when it comes to the body's natural birthing process. Like, do I really need to do all these things? And I don't think most people even ask that or know what their different options are, and maybe don't care to, which is totally cool too. But for me, I'm just of the mindset that I don't think I want to interfere with things unless I need to, because I feel like I'm a healthy person and my body was meant to do this. And yeah, don't do anything unless I need it. I don't need all these proactive things. I'm good.
Totally. I agree. And I feel like that happens a lot. I remember being shocked when I first started working in like the prenatal care setting, and just the hospital setting in general, but really prenatal care had opened my eyes a little bit to sort of like how people come into prenatal care. And it really felt like a lot of the time people are pregnant, they come in and it's like, here I am. Tell me what to do. Tell me what's right for me. Tell me what you want me to do. And like, they just like hand themselves over in a sense. And that was a huge shock to me. Because like you, I always wanted to know, like, why is this recommended? And like, it seems like a lot of things in healthcare, as most people probably understand, are a little bit one size fits all. And again, not necessarily a fault to like the staff and the doctors and midwives and nurses, etc., but it's just our system. Like it's hard to individualize everything and take care of everybody in a different way, but that's what's needed. So if someone doesn't say, you know, do I really need this? Or I'm healthy, my baby's healthy, like, why are you recommending this to me? If you don't question and get answers or advocate for yourself, especially depending on the actual practice you're at or hospital you're at, you know, some are so much better than others. You might end up in an experience that you don't even know why things are being offered to you or happening to you. And, you know, that's not a great place to be or a great feeling to have. And I think that's when we lose trust in our bodies and ourselves by all these little things that kind of add up.
Right. Along the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And it's really easy to be like, oh, hospitals, right? But it's like, it's also us and our willingness to just take zero ownership of the process and to just be like, all right, whatever you tell me to do, you know best, without realizing like actually hospitals streamline things in a way that's very unindividualized. There's lots of things that are still done procedurally, depending on what hospital you're at, where you're going, that are shockingly and alarmingly done on a routine basis. And if you don't know what your kid's getting when they're born, if you don't know what procedures you're getting, like that was like one of the biggest things, or my biggest takeaway from pregnancy and going through. And I'm glad that I chose to do this like first experience going through the hospital, because it has made me appreciate, what it offers, but also realize like, okay, maybe this isn't the way I want to go next time. And definitely happy that I'm somebody who like does do a lot of research into it and doesn't just trust that like everything is a good idea for me personally. But yeah, I think it's just a byproduct of our society kind of placing like so much authority in doctors and and the healthcare system, which is great for certain things it does. But there's like a layer of our own participation. And it's like
Sorry,
somebody,
there's a train going by outside. I don't know if you can hear it.
yeah, it's kind of a pleasant little noise.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's like picking up on the recording.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It sounded like a phone ringing kind of, but yeah, it's just this like layer of trust that people want to place where maybe it's not appropriate to do in every context, especially something like birthing. That's not really a medical, it's a natural process.
It's not a medical emergency most of the time. And yet we hand over like our experience and say like, oh, it's like this like paternal whatever thing where it's like, oh, you know best for me. And it kills me because no one knows best for you. There are amazing practitioners who are working for you. Like, I think remembering that you are like hiring them essentially.
Yeah, that's
and
also
I think we can, remember that they're working with you to provide you expert opinions, but that doesn't mean that you have to do or listen to every single thing that is recommended to you if you don't feel good about it. And so learning about all of these things, the risks, the benefits, what is your gut telling you, like your intuition, which in our culture, that's out the window, which we're trying to, we got to pull it back in and start trusting again. And then, coming to a decision on like whatever is being offered to you, pregnancy, postpartum, in your birth, or as a parent, like making choices for your child. But yeah, this handing over to the professionals of like ourselves or our children is not serving us.
Yeah, and super disempowering. And I think where a lot of this fear around birthing stems from when it's so outsourced to something that feels like we have no control over the outcome. And I find the culture and the conversations I've had with the midwives at the hospital I'm going to seems really good at, melding together the more medical intervention approach and giving you, why do we do these interventions? And this is your risk. This is what it's helpful for. You can decline it if you want. And also really emphasizing physiological birthing as midwives. And so I think that's wonderful, but not all hospitals are like that. And so what you said is so true that, you don't have to go. You're choosing, it's a business ultimately, which is good to remember. And the fact that these interventions cost money, it's a business, all of those nuances, but also it's a business and you're a customer and you get to choose. You're not, I think a lot of times as women, especially if you are someone who's wanting to decline anything or ask more questions, we feel, and I've even felt this way too, where I'm like doing something wrong. It's like, wait a second, you work for me, honey. Like, I get to make the choice. It's like empowering ourselves around that.
Totally. And I think a lot of people don't realize too that like you pick where you're going to give birth. And I found over the years that people often don't shop around. They don't learn about the place where they plan to give birth ahead of time. And instead, what?
So they're giving birth.
Yeah. And what happens often, not always, but often people just, they've been seeing a gynecologist for years or a midwife for years. And then they get pregnant and they're like, oh yeah, like, of course I'll just stay with this person. They don't, they don't even know anything about the hospital where that individual or that practice attends births at. And they're just sort of like filtered into that hospital setting or wherever. And instead it should be like backwards. I think the other way around, like when you are thinking about getting pregnant or early on in your pregnancy, learning about your options, about where you can give birth, and learning about those places, how they practice, like, are they practicing in a way that is helpful to the kind of experience you want to have or not? And then from there, deciding where you think you want to give birth, and then, okay, what offices, what midwives and doctors see patients and go to that hospital. So, you're going to be in a place where you feel safe, you feel comfortable, you feel like you're going to be heard and supported in the way that, you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Such good advice to share. I think that's something that's lost in the process with a lot of people just kind of going and not realizing that it's something you can shop around for. You can interview practitioners, you can ask them about their different rates of different interventions. Every hospital is different, and what some things are mandatory at some hospitals, other hospitals they're not. Some emphasize, they really do emphasize like more physiological birthing if that's something that you want, or if it's something you don't care about. And it's totally no, I think there's no, everyone has the entitled to a different birthing vision or preference. That's what they want, whether it's one end of the spectrum, the other, whatever it is that feels most comfortable for you. My biggest thing is always just making sure people know what their options are and know that know what they're signing up for, know that a lot of things aren't mandatory, know that some things can be made to feel like they are, and that everyone has to do it, but it's really good to explore that and see, what resonates with you, what doesn't, when you do research outside of what they're telling you. And on top of it being a business, there's a lot of liability involved too. There's a lot of things that they do to, like, for lack of better words, like cover your ass type of vibe. And so really looking at the risks associated with doing it, with not doing it, before you just assume that it's like a great thing that everybody does. But I wanted to switch gears and talk to you a little bit about your experience with alcohol elimination and how that like showed up for you with your health, because I know you talked about too that it was kind of something that evolved out of health issues and you decided to cut back on and eliminate alcohol, and then some of the realizations you had around it moving forward. So do you mind sharing about your process eliminating?
Yeah, not at all. Excuse me. So it's almost been exactly a year since I had my last drink, which seems so weird to think about and to say that it's almost been a whole year without alcohol, because I have consumed alcohol at various times since I was a teenager, right? Like before I was 21, in college, maybe a little here and there. But part of the reason why I stopped drinking alcohol last year, it was a health issue. Nothing was coming back abnormal, like none of my tests, liver function, whatever, were coming back abnormal, but I could tell my body was not liking it. And I don't think there's ever a time, except maybe when you're buzzed or drunk, that you might think your body likes it. Like you might like the feeling of it at the time, but it was really obvious to me last year that my body was saying, please stop. Like, we can't handle this anymore. I was just having different symptoms, even with like small amounts of alcohol. And so I just had to cut it out completely because I felt terrible. I wasn't able to like be myself and feel really great. And when you have 3 kids, you need to do everything you possibly can to feel really great and like be on your game to keep them fed and happy and alive and, you know, things running how they need to in your home. And in cutting out alcohol, for health reasons, it's really opened my eyes up a bit to how often we use alcohol as parents as a coping mechanism. And no shade to anyone that does that. Like, I was doing that at times too. I think that's why we drink alcohol, as like a coping mechanism. We enjoy it and we want to like feel relaxed and in a different headspace. But especially during COVID, I think because so many people were having such a hard time, especially parents being like cooped up in their homes, like with their kids all the time, like that is hard. It's hard when it wasn't COVID, then that just like made it a pressure cooker in people's homes, I think. And I think a lot of people turn to alcohol and now not having alcohol. And I wasn't like drinking a lot heavily. I don't know how this is sounding right now, but I've never
like I was, so I'll just take that one on the chin. That's like right when I stopped. Like, don't worry. I was drinking way more than everyone drank. Now I'm a sober curious coach, so you know, no judgment here.
just spreading your wisdom and experience with all those. So yeah, it's definitely been eye-opening, because when I'm not drinking, obviously I feel so different. I feel so much better. Do I sometimes want that feeling of like a buzz? Sure, I'm not gonna lie. Like, sometimes when my kids are going nuts and it's been a hard week, I'm like, oh, that sounds like such a lovely form of escape right now. But then remembering like it comes with, you know, consequences. Like, you feel awful, you feel disconnected. And I don't want to feel like that anymore. And it's been just such an interesting journey the last year of stepping away from that piece of things. I also recently, just this week actually, it's kind of interesting. I like challenged myself to like see if I could spend no money for a week. And
Nice.
yeah, and it brought me back to the alcohol thing in as a coping mechanism. And it made me realize how often we use things in our society, especially as parents, to cope, because parenting is freaking hard. We buy things, we buy our kids things, we want to go out, we, you know, want to get a treat or a coffee or whatever. And it's been eye-opening this week again, like trying to like rein all that in and reminding me of like the alcohol piece of things, and, you know, using that as a crutch and a coping technique, when really like what is the underlying feeling that we're seeking? It's not what the alcohol is giving us and what the spending money is giving us. It's just an escape, kind of.
Oh, that's so good. And that's the basis. I always say create a life you don't need to escape, because I think we, especially with what we were touching upon earlier with, I talk all about societal norms all of the time, but it's just so needed in our day and age to talk about our conditioning around things and how we're trained to build lives that are really unmanageable ultimately, and the way that we're programmed to construct lives that are unmanageable and then use all of these unhealthy coping mechanisms to escape it. So it's just this process of deconstructing some of those belief systems. And like you just said, really looking at what's the feeling beneath this? Like, what am I trying to do here? I'm just trying to distract myself in another way. And like the biggest superpower that we can give ourselves is being able to kind of sit with feelings of discomfort and move through them without seeking the next dopamine hit, whether it's like scrolling on our phones to zone out, or which I'm guilty of all the time. I just had to set boundaries around my morning routine because of that. I'm like, all right, not starting my day on Instagram. Like this isn't happening anymore.
Good for
But
you.
yeah, but it's hard, and it's like it is interesting, like you said too, how you can see it after you take it away with one thing, how it can manifest in other vices in a way,
Mhm.
and seeing, okay, what's at the bottom of this? And yeah, just the whole culture around mommy wine culture is just another disempowering one, right? Just the narrative of it all. And, you know,
I want
again,
to
it's,
go off of what you said because
yeah, go ahead.
this is all like everything's connected, right? And everything you just said is so deeply connected from consuming alcohol and like the feelings that we're actually seeking. And that translates over into birth too. And a couple things I wanted to mention, like that feeling of like wanting to escape or be distracted, that happens in labor too. And if we don't learn how to practice just being present in the moment and in our body with what's happening, that can be so challenging in labor. If you're trying to escape it instead of
Mhm.
just surrender to it.
Right.
And that translates all of the lessons we are given in pregnancy and birth translate to parenting so
Mhm.
deeply. And so, then when we're in parenting, how do we surrender to those hard times without trying to just escape with these things? And um, what what you said, mommy wine culture and dad wine culture and parent wine culture, right? All together. Um, I think that as a society, in so many ways, as you know, I'm like preaching to the choir here, but we're
I love it.
so
Preach.
disconnected, right? We're so disconnected, and this is so true in pregnancy, birth, etc.
From each other, family
Yeah,
unit.
we're so disconnected. And this is why I have like wanted to create this business too and create these spaces and opportunities through my business with WOOM for people to come together and to actually bond and to have these opportunities for true vulnerable connection. Because I feel like mommy wine culture, daddy wine culture, parent, drinking culture, whatever, people don't know how to connect. They don't know how to talk anymore. They don't know how to be vulnerable. They don't know how to be themselves. And so that's their way of trying to escape how hard parenting on their own is, because that's what we're doing. We don't have our village anymore. We're parenting with two adults, sometimes one, all the children, or even just one child. That is not normal. Like, if we think about our history as humans and like other places in the world, that is so weird to think that we should be responsible for everything that happens for just our family with no help. And we're burnt
Mhm.
out. People are so burnt out. Parents are so burnt out. So then they're turning to these unhealthy coping things as a way to escape and as a way to connect, because deep down, even if they don't realize it, like that is what they need and that's what they're seeking. So what do? We say, oh, like let's go get drinks, or like why don't you guys come over for wine night or whatever, which is totally fine. But if that's our only way now that we know how to cope and connect, like this is not good. We're not in a good place.
Yeah,
This is why I really am working so hard to
yeah,
create these spaces where people don't feel like they have to have a drink, um, or they have to like show up and be perfect. They can show up and just land and just talk about what's going on and connect in this vulnerable way, and share their experience, and also find support and sort of like recreate their village. I feel like that's been used so much the last few years, but
yeah.
truly that's what we need as a society. We need to like rebuild the village.
Right. so true is this, and you did such a good job of bridging all of the topics we're talking about in such a way that makes so much sense, right? And what I got out of it too is there's just these really uncomfortable opportunities and portals for transformation if we're willing to sit through them without looking for the nearest exit. But that's really not how we're programmed. We're often programmed to like escape discomfort at all cost. And it's truly sacrificing the opportunity to grow, the opportunity to experience, the beauty of birth if we don't feed into like a lot of our programming and commiseration around that, or the beauty of deepened connection with other people and other parents over what can be challenging about parenting without having to do it over drinking. I think we're just robbing ourselves of the opportunity for like deeper transformation, deeper connection when we're constantly looking for escapes. And again, like you said, no shade. This is like a completely normalized thing, but that's kind of a big part of this podcast is exploring what is normalized and like how is it serving us? Because when we're drinking to escape the kids that we chose to create, and we're doing it because we're following the programming of society telling us that we have to have a full-time job, both of the parents, we have to operate in autonomy as a nuclear family outside of any connection, community, or extended family, and we need to provide financially, we need to get that, like pay for however much college is these days, and like do all of these things, like, right, we kind of hate our jobs, we kind of are overwhelmed with parenting, like this is all normal. And so then to top it off, like drinking to cope with these lives we've been told are the lives we're supposed to be building. So just taking a moment with everything we've talked about to like reflect on what is it that we're building, and like where is it leading us, and how is this serving us and being our happiest, most fulfilled selves, and enjoying like what life really is made of, which is like reproducing and connecting with community and sharing experiences that aren't just based in like complaining and commiserating over how much like our kids suck or something. Like that seems like there could be more here that could be more meaningful. And ultimately leaves us feeling like shit after.
Yes, 100%.
And more anxiety and more stress. And we know like alcohol does nothing for any of those things. And so I think what you said is so right on, is just like that pull to like escape the challenges. But that's kind of where the beauty lies when we can embrace it and move through these opportunities to grow and learn and be present with the process of kids and all that stuff. And like, again, I don't have kids yet, so we'll see.
Maybe I'll go. Your baby's with us.
Yeah, they're right here. Next thing you know, I'm gonna be like, screw sober curiosity. I'm joining the mommy wine club. No way. But yeah, and so I think just the opportunity to reflect and question some of these things that we just blindly accept, and ask like, how am I empowering myself, back to what you said, even with birthing, how am I empowering myself with birth, with parenthood, with my family and my community. And I think it's so cool what you're doing, building community is such a big part of it, and helping people to see that birth doesn't have to be this scary thing. It can actually be a really intimate, sacred bonding experience for you and your partner. That's like a whole nother topic, how disconnected men have become from like the process too. And so, yeah, it's really powerful, beautiful thing, parenting and birthing and all these things, if we can allow it to be. And so, yeah, I wanted to, before we wrap up, is just I had like so many more questions about motherhood, so we're gonna have to do another podcast sometime. Sure. Maybe after the baby's here. I always say this at the end because I'm like, shit, I never get through all my goddamn questions because everyone is so interesting. But I wanted to give you space to just share like, what is your best advice in 3 categories? So your best advice for the pregnant mom, your best advice for the new mom and your best advice for the mom who is trying to break free of like that urge to escape motherhood or mommy wine culture. Like, what would you say to those three different women?
Ooh,
The
I
pregnant
love
mom.
this question so much. Okay. I guess best
Start
advice.
pregnant. I'm
Yeah,
right here.
best advice for a pregnant mama like yourself. Um, Throughout pregnancy, taking the time to slow down, to really connect with your body. So many of us, and I know a little bit about you, so obviously I know that you have been doing this. But so many of us are in our head, and pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and parenting takes place in our heart and our body. And creating practices during pregnancy to get out of our head and get into our heart, our intuition, and our body is going to serve you immensely throughout the rest of your journey. And also for a pregnant mom or family, preparing your support. Like, what is support going to look like? And I do this practice in my birth preparation class with families. We have 5 classes together, and the last class is about postpartum and planning. And we create a postpartum plan. And I'm not going to go into all the details of what that looks like and what we talk about, but setting yourself up for success in your support system. You need a lot of help after, and no one realizes that because, again, if you've never done this, you've never seen probably what does true postpartum look like. It's not like the movies. Like, we need a lot of supports in place. We need a village. And if you don't have a village, you need to find a way to sort of create that and set that up for yourself in the form of nourishment, meals, who can come help you take care of your home and do chores and take care of pets and help you get the rest that you need, again, because even though it's 2 usually adults and 1 little baby, there's so much that we need during those early weeks and months. So that would be my best advice for pregnant people. For what was the next one? Like
New mom.
New mom. Okay. Do all the things I just said, plus set the bar really low for what you are expecting of yourself. Like, we are not entertaining. We are not making like big crazy plans. You are doing the most important job in the entire universe, feeding and caring for a baby. You're growing a brain, a heart, like all these incredible things, and healing your body. And if we don't take the time to let those things happen, and we're rushing to the next thing, or we're trying to manage all the things in our life and not zoning in and focusing on like your health, your body, and your baby, that is going to set you on a trajectory that you don't want to be on, because there's so much you're like laying the foundation for how your body's going to work and how your baby and your new life is going to function. So just like be. And then also I want to add, take tons of videos. Like, I wish that I took more videos because I miss being like, pictures are great. Pictures are wonderful, but videos, like, you're like really getting to relive, like, what are their little sounds that they make, and like seeing yourself hold them or feed them. Like, what did that look like? So tons of videos. And then what was the last one?
The last one, well, before we go on, I wanted to say too, that ties into what you were saying so much about too, just how society is set up. And it's almost like we have to really make a concerted effort to not subscribe to, you know, all of the systems that disempower us to begin with. One of which is like pushing yourself to just be a normal person one day after giving birth. And so it takes extra concerted effort to go against what the mainstream is doing and to set different boundaries for yourself regardless of what everyone's doing. So I think that is such good advice. And then the last one is for moms who are trying to break free of like mommy wine culture. Any tips you have there?
Yes. I think I think learning how to be vulnerable, which is so hard, but that's when true connection is going to happen. And when you're going to be able to not feel like you have to have a drink in your hand or be in a certain like frame of mind, with a substance in order to be vulnerable. Like that's hard for so many people, clearly why we have like a problem in our in our country with alcohol and substance use and whatever. But and that's how you're going to find those people, your people, like in this new realm of life that you're entering. You're going to have your friends, you're going to have your family, but there's something so important about connections that you will make with people who are going through the same kinds of things as you during this postpartum time frame. Again, not to be like preaching on my business here, but this is why I'm trying to create this space and these opportunities, because, it's so hard to get out of the house when you have a new baby to begin with. And then to imagine yourself being in a room with strangers, like, how am I going to talk to people and be vulnerable? Like, I was crying this morning and I have like baby spit up all over me and I haven't showered in 3 days. And like, I can't meet a stranger like this and like be friends with them. So I think like allowing yourself to practice being vulnerable, and those are where the most beautiful connections are going to be made. And those are the connections that we need as new parents, with other new parents that know the life we're living.
Right. And it's so true too. And in a way where you can show up raw and like not have to do it under the guise of like community drinking. Because I think too, especially, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like hormones are pretty intense after giving birth. And there can be a lot of emotions. And I would imagine that alcohol on top of that would be really scary, considering the anxiety and depression I got just from drinking normally. So, yeah, such good advice. I'm going to be spending a lot of time with you postpartum.
Hey!
Oh, perfect. Oh, I have my plan in place. Yeah, so all good advice. Thank you so much. There's so many just within everything we talked about, like there's so much here, just the medical system, the medicalized kind of approach to birthing versus kind of embracing the beauty of it as a natural process, the idea of not needing to check out of parenthood or self-medicate from it, and like where does that leave us and what can we do instead, and mommy wine culture and how that shows up and what is it really doing for us, and then motherhood too. And so I want to be able to definitely do another podcast with you, just diving into like each and every one of these more because they're so good. I feel like we barely scratched the surface. But just before we go, tell everyone where they can find you and all your wisdom.
So on Instagram, my handle is at WOOM, WOOM .wellness. And my website is WOOM, WOOM wellness.org. And I would love to connect with you guys, hear from you guys, check out my offerings, and reach out anytime. And Katie, I cannot wait to hear.
I'll show you the baby. You can see the baby's belly.
Yay! Oh my gosh, you're so cute. Look at you.
They're in there. They're moving a lot today, honey, I'll tell you what. But yes, thanks for joining. And thanks everyone for listening. And again, with these longer ones where we definitely have more topics to discuss in this realm, if anyone has questions that you want me to stock up on for the next time I chat with Christine, feel free to drop them. And don't forget to like, share, and comment if this resonates with you. And have a beautiful day. Bye.